Judge Maya Johnson thought she understood injustice until two racist cops dragged her from her car, shaved off her beautiful dreadlocks with clippers, and threw her in jail like a common criminal. They had no idea she would be presiding over their brutal assault trial in 2 weeks. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. In the bustling city of Brookfield, where tall glass buildings housed the wealthy while broken-down apartments sheltered the poor, Judge Maya Johnson represented hope for countless people who had given up on the system. At 48 years old, Maya had climbed mountains that seemed impossible for a black woman born in the segregated neighborhoods of the 1970s. Maya's childhood was painted with struggle and determination. Her mother, Sarah, worked as a house cleaner for wealthy white families, returning home each evening with her back aching and stories of quiet humiliation. Maya remembered watching her mother's hands, rough and cracked from scrubbing floors, as she counted the small bills that barely covered their rent. The neighborhood they lived in was forgotten by the city, streetlights that flickered when they worked at all, sidewalks cracked like broken promises, and police who saw every young black face as a threat. When Maya was 10, she experienced something that would burn in her memory forever. Police stormed their block one Tuesday morning, claiming they were searching for a robbery suspect. They kicked down doors without warrants, shouted racial slurs that made Maya's stomach turn, and dragged innocent neighbors from their homes in handcuffs. Maya hid under her bed, her small body trembling as heavy boots stomped through their apartment. Her mother held her breath in the closet, praying they would not be next. From that terrifying morning, Maya made a promise to herself that would guide her entire life. She would change the system from the inside. School became Maya's weapon against injustice. While other kids played after classes, Maya buried herself in books. She studied by candlelight when the electricity was cut off, memorized vocabulary words while walking to school, and never missed a day even when she was sick. Her teachers noticed her hunger for knowledge, and slowly, scholarship opportunities opened doors that had seemed permanently locked. College was a culture shock. Maya felt like she was visiting another planet where students complained about problems that seemed like luxuries to her. Law school tested every ounce of Maya's strength. Her classmates made cruel jokes about her accent, touched her hair without permission, and excluded her from study groups. Some professors seemed surprised when she performed well, as if her success was an accident rather than the result of countless hours of preparation. Maya graduated at the top of her class, but the celebration felt hollow when she realized the real fight was just beginning. As a public defender, Maya threw herself into cases that other lawyers avoided. She represented drug dealers, thieves, and people who had made desperate choices in desperate circumstances. She learned that justice was not blind, it had very clear vision when it came to skin color, zip codes, and bank account balances. Maya fought for clients who could not afford fancy lawyers, spending her own money on investigation costs and losing sleep over cases that seemed hopeless. Years passed and Maya's reputation grew. She became a prosecutor, then finally achieved her dream of becoming a judge. Her courtroom became known as a place where everyone received fair treatment, regardless of their background. Maya lived alone in a small house she had bought in a neighborhood where black and white families lived side by side, not perfectly but trying. Her only companion was Justice, a black cat she had rescued from the streets. In her spare time, Maya tended a garden behind her house, growing flowers that bloomed despite harsh conditions, just like she had. 3 months before everything changed, a case landed on Maya's desk that would test everything she believed about justice and revenge. 2 police officers from the Brookfield Police Department were charged with brutally assaulting Tyler Green, a 19-year-old black college student. Tyler had been driving home from his job at a grocery store when officers Derek Hayes and Sonia Ramirez pulled him over for a broken taillight, a minor violation that should have resulted in a simple warning. Derek Hayes was a 52-year-old veteran officer whose father had also been a cop. Hayes grew up believing that police work was a war between good people and criminals, with very clear lines about who belonged in which category. His father had taught him that certain neighborhoods bred trouble, and Hayes carried those lessons like gospel. He had been suspended twice for excessive force complaints, but the police union had gotten him reinstated both times. His marriage was falling apart because his wife could not stand his anger and the way he talked about the people he arrested. Sonia Ramirez came from a different background but had learned to survive in the same toxic environment. Her parents had immigrated from Mexico when she was 5, working multiple jobs to give their children opportunities they never had. Sonia became a police officer to prove she belonged in America, to show that her family deserved respect. But the job slowly changed her, forcing her to choose between speaking up against racism and keeping her career. She chose silence, and that silence made her complicit in things that kept her awake at night. According to witnesses and a cell phone video that had gone viral, Hayes had approached Tyler's car already angry. He screamed racial slurs, yanked the young man from his vehicle and slammed him against the hood. When Tyler tried to explain that he was coming from work and had not known about the broken taillight, Hayes accused him of resisting arrest. Ramirez joined in, using her taser on Tyler while he was already restrained. The attack left Tyler with broken ribs, a concussion and trauma that would haunt him for years. The video sparked massive protests throughout Brookfield. People of all races marched through downtown, carrying signs that read, "Enough is enough," and "Justice for Tyler." The police department tried to control the narrative, claiming that Tyler had been combative and that the officers had followed proper procedure. But the video told a different story, and public pressure forced the district attorney to file charges. Maya studied the case files with the thoroughness that had made her reputation. She read every police report, watched the video dozens of times, and researched the backgrounds of both officers. Hayes's record showed a clear pattern of complaints from Black and Latino community members, complaints that had been dismissed or ignored by his supervisors. Ramirez had a clean record officially, but Maya found witness statements describing her as Hayes's shadow, following his lead even when she seemed uncomfortable. The trial was scheduled to begin in 2 weeks, and Maya felt the enormous weight of responsibility. This case would be watched by the entire city, maybe the entire country. Police officers were rarely convicted for brutality, especially against young Black men. Maya knew that her decision would either reinforce people's faith in the justice system or confirm their belief that it was permanently broken. Hayes and Ramirez had worked as partners for 8 years, developing the kind of unspoken communication that comes from spending countless hours together in stressful situations. Hayes was the dominant personality, making decisions and expecting Ramirez to follow without question. They had discussed the upcoming trial casually, neither seeming particularly worried about the outcome. Hayes often said that juries understood the difficult job police had to do, and that judges knew the importance of backing up law enforcement. They had never bothered to research who would be presiding over their case. Judge assignments were just bureaucratic details that lawyers worried about. On a Friday evening 3 weeks before the trial, Maya decided to attend a charity fundraiser at a community center in her old neighborhood. The event was raising money for college scholarships for kids from low-income families, a cause close to Maya's heart. She dressed simply in a black dress and jacket, wearing her hair in the neat dreadlocks that reached her shoulders. Maya loved her hair, it connected her to her ancestors and represented her pride in her heritage. She had grown it for years, caring for it like a garden. The community center was in the part of Brookfield that city planners had forgotten, where streetlights worked sporadically and potholes made driving treacherous. Maya drove carefully through the dark streets, thinking about the kids who would benefit from the scholarship fund. As she turned onto Martin Luther King Boulevard, she noticed headlights in her rearview mirror. The car behind her suddenly lit up with flashing red and blue lights, and a siren pierced the quiet night. Maya's heart sank, but she remained calm. She had been pulled over before and knew the rules that kept Black drivers alive during police encounters. She pulled over slowly, turned off her engine, and placed both hands on the steering wheel where they could be clearly seen. She waited for the officers to approach, mentally preparing herself for another example of driving while Black. Hayes and Ramirez stepped out of their patrol car with hands on their weapons. They approached Maya's car aggressively, as if she were a dangerous criminal rather than a woman driving alone on a Friday night. "Get out of the car now," Hayes shouted, his voice harsh and commanding. Maya opened her door slowly, keeping her movements deliberate and non-threatening. "Officers, what seems to be the problem this evening?" "This vehicle matches the description of one involved in a hit-and-run accident earlier tonight," Ramirez said, shining her flashlight directly into Maya's eyes. Maya blinked against the bright light, trying to remain calm. "Officers, I think there has been some mistake. This is my personal vehicle, and I have been driving directly from my home to a community event. I have not been in any accident." Hayes grabbed Maya's arm roughly, spinning her around to face her car. "Stop arguing and put your hands behind your back. You're under arrest." Maya felt cold metal handcuffs snap around her wrists. The reality of what was happening began to sink in, but she forced herself to stay composed. "Officers, I am requesting to know the specific charges and to contact my attorney." They ignored her request, pushing her toward their patrol car. During the drive to the police station, Maya heard Hayes and Ramirez talking as if she were not there. "These people always have excuses," Hayes muttered, glancing at Maya in the rearview mirror. "Makes our job 10 times harder when they don't just cooperate," Ramirez added. At the police station, a busy place filled with ringing phones, tired-looking officers, and people in handcuffs waiting to be processed, Hayes and Ramirez brought Maya to the booking desk. The desk sergeant, Tom Morrison, was an old friend of Hayes who had learned to ask few questions about his arrests. "What do we have here?" Morrison asked, barely looking up from his paperwork. "Hit-and-run suspect. She claims to be some kind of judge," Hayes said with a smirk. Maya spoke clearly and calmly. "I am Judge Maya Johnson of the Brookfield District Court. I am requesting to contact my attorney immediately." Morrison laughed, sharing a look with Hayes. "Judge Johnson? Right, and I'm the mayor of Brookfield. Put her in interrogation room 3. They took Maya to a small windowless room with concrete walls, a metal table and 3 chairs. Ramirez began searching through Maya's purse, finding court documents, legal briefs and her judicial identification. "Look at this," Ramirez said, showing the papers to Hayes. "She has all kinds of legal documents. Probably stole them from some lawyer's office." Hayes examined Maya's identification, but the idea that she might actually be a judge never seriously entered his mind. "Let's find out who she really is and what she's up to." What happened next would haunt Maya for the rest of her life. Hayes forced her to stand against the wall with her hands pressed flat against the concrete. He began searching her roughly, his hands lingering in ways that made Maya's skin crawl. "This hair looks suspicious," Hayes said, grabbing Maya's dreadlocks and pulling them painfully. "Could be hiding drugs or weapons in here." Maya tried to pull away. "Do not touch my hair. You have no right to do this." Ramirez held Maya's shoulders while Hayes went to a desk drawer and pulled out a pair of scissors. "Time for a proper search. This hair has got to go." "No," Maya cried, struggling against their grip. "You cannot do this. This is assault." They forced Maya into a chair, holding her down while Hayes began cutting. Each snip of the scissors felt like a violation, locks of her beautiful hair falling to the floor around her feet. Maya felt tears streaming down her face, but she refused to give them the satisfaction of hearing her beg. Hayes was not satisfied with scissors alone. He found electric clippers and began shaving Maya's head completely, the vibration making her feel sick to her stomach. When he was finished, Maya's scalp was bare and nicked with small cuts from the rough treatment. "Much better," Hayes said, admiring his work. "Looks clean and proper now." Ramirez took out her phone and snapped several photos of Maya's shaved head. "Something to remember this by." They threw Maya into a holding cell with 3 other women, 2 black women and 1 Latina who had been arrested on various minor charges. The cell was cold and dirty, with a toilet in one corner and thin mattresses on concrete benches. Maya sat in the corner, wrapping her arms around herself and trying to process what had happened. One of the women, Lisa, looked at Maya with sympathy. "What did they do to your head?" "The officers cut off all my hair," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. Lisa nodded knowingly. "They do that to break your spirit. Make you feel small and powerless. I have been arrested 6 times, and they always find some way to humiliate you." Maya told her story to the other women, and they shared their own experiences with police brutality and degradation. Maya realized that she was experiencing what countless others had endured in silence, with no recourse and no one to believe their stories. The long night stretched ahead of Maya as she sat in that cold cell, her head throbbing and her heart broken. She thought about her mother, who had endured so much humiliation while cleaning other people's houses. She thought about the 10-year-old girl hiding under the bed while police terrorized her neighborhood. She thought about all the cases she had tried, all the people who had sat in cells just like this one, waiting for a justice system that seemed designed to fail them. But Maya also felt something else growing inside her alongside the pain and humiliation. She felt a burning anger that would fuel her determination to make sure Hayes and Ramirez paid for what they had done, not just to her, but to Tyler Green and probably countless others whose stories had never been heard. Morning came slowly. Hayes and Ramirez returned to the station for their next shift, bragging to their colleagues about the crazy woman they had arrested who claimed to be a judge. They described cutting off her hair as if it were a hilarious prank rather than a serious assault. The phone call that changed everything came at 8:30 in the morning. The desk sergeant answered, and Maya could hear parts of the conversation from her cell. "Judge Johnson is missing? Black woman with dreadlocks, last seen on the east side last night? We'll keep an eye out." Hayes overheard the conversation and felt his stomach drop. "Johnson? Did they say Judge Johnson?" Panic spread through the station as supervisors realized what had happened. The police chief arrived within minutes, his face red with anger and fear about the scandal that was about to explode. "Release her immediately," the chief ordered. and somebody better have a good explanation for this disaster. Maya walked out of that police station with her head held high, despite the scarf she had wrapped around her bald scalp. She ignored the stammered apologies and promises of investigation. She drove home in silence, showered, and tried to wash away the feeling of their hands on her body and in her hair. Friends and colleagues began arriving at Maya's house as news of her arrest spread. They were shocked by her appearance and outraged by what had been done to her. Community leaders promised to organize protests and demand justice. Legal experts offered to represent her in civil lawsuits against the police department. The story exploded across local and national media. Someone had leaked the photos that Ramirez had taken, showing Maya before and after the assault on her hair. Headlines read, "Cops humiliate judge in racist attack," and "Police brutality reaches new low." The images of Maya's transformation from a dignified judge to a brutalized prisoner became symbols of everything wrong with American policing. Protests erupted throughout Brookfield and spread to other cities. People carried signs with Maya's picture and chanted demands for justice. The video of Tyler Green's assault was played alongside images of Maya's shorn head, creating a powerful narrative about police officers who seemed to believe they were above the law. When the trial of Hayes and Ramirez finally began, the courthouse was surrounded by protesters and media. Maya presided over the case wearing a colorful headscarf, her dignity intact despite everything she had endured. Hayes and Ramirez sat at the defendant's table looking defeated, finally understanding the consequences of their actions. The evidence against them was overwhelming. The video of Tyler's assault played repeatedly, medical reports detailed his injuries, and witness after witness testified about the officer's brutal behavior. Tyler himself took the stand, his voice strong as he described the attack and its lasting effects on his life. Maya's own experience added weight to the prosecution's case, though she recused herself from making the final sentencing decision to avoid any appearance of personal bias. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all charges. Both officers received 10-year prison sentences, sending a message throughout the law enforcement community that brutality would no longer be tolerated. Maya became a symbol of strength and resilience, testifying before legislative committees about police reform and founding an organization to support victims of police violence. Her hair grew back slowly, and Maya wore it as a crown of victory over those who had tried to break her spirit. The city of Brookfield implemented new training programs, oversight committees, and accountability measures that became models for other communities struggling with police misconduct. People who heard Maya's story felt every emotion she had experienced: the terror of being brutalized by those sworn to protect, the humiliation of having her dignity stripped away, and ultimately the triumph of turning pain into purpose. They hated Hayes and Ramirez for their cruelty and blindness, but they also saw hope in Maya's refusal to be defeated. The story spread beyond Brookfield, inspiring other victims of police brutality to speak out and other judges to examine their own roles in perpetuating injustice. Maya's experience proved that even those with power and position were not safe from a system that desperately needed reform, but it also showed that one person's courage could begin to change the world.